back to Sportsline here on News Channel 5 Plus. Yours truly, Jon Burton, hanging out with pro wrestler, Showtime Eric Young. You're more than just a pro wrestler, though. Like you said, you had that great fishing show for a long time. I know you're dabbling into a lot of different areas. We're going to get into that as the show goes along, for sure. But I want to talk about your time in TNA wrestling. I loved it. I thought you were super entertaining, whether you were kind of doing the comedy gimmick, and somebody tweeted me, wanted to ask you about World Elite, the faction that you had. They were a big fan of World Elite. It was you and the other quote-unquote foreign wrestlers, kind of anti-American, that kind of thing. What was your time like in TNA? Because you got to be a world heavyweight champion. You kind of went from like the comedy gimmick to like taken seriously. Then you kind of did the insane gimmick, which was very entertaining. I thought whatever you were involved in was super entertaining, and I could tell you put 100% into whatever it was they had for you.
Yeah, I mean, pro wrestling is all I've wanted to do since I was 5 years old. I mean, so the fact that I was making a living at it. I mean, that my first and only goal in wrestling was to sign a contract to say, this is what I do for a living.
Right.
I don't have another job on the side. I pay my bills and I live a decent life through wrestling. In 2004, that became a reality for me, and TNA was the reason for that. And my career is very interesting that way, where I've done everything. I mean, and I can't say like, oh, I think I could do it. I've done it. You mean I've wrestled the opening match. I've wrestled the main event. I've won every title there was. I've wrestled girls. I was knockout women's tag team champion with ODB.
That's right.
I can truly say that I've done it all. And people say, did you like doing the comedy stuff? Did you like this and that? The first year I was there, I was a member of Team Canada.
Team Canada, yeah.
We were the bad guys, and I don't know what Canada ever did the United States.
You guys were hilarious.
Yeah, it was
so great.
Take 4 or 5 of your best friends and you sign your first contract and you're living your dream. Like, those are some of the best years of my life. I didn't say a single word for 2 years. Then I did the comedy thing for almost 8 years, maybe closer to 9 years. Love that. Like you were talking earlier, and we were talking about, got a fishing show out of that. Branched into television, hosted a thing on Spike, and did a whole bunch of other stuff because it showed that I could do other things. During that 8 years, I didn't wrestle a whole lot. My job was to carry the entertainment factor of the show. And most of that was talking and using physicality to be funny, but it wasn't really about wrestling. But eventually that runs out, like everything in wrestling. It gets old, it gets stale, so it's time to move on. And I pitched a thing where I wanted to be a heel. I wanted to be a bad guy. I didn't want to just be the bad guy. I wanted to be the worst.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of
you
people.
were dastardly. I'm gonna have Taylor roll in some footage of some of your work here, so people can get a look that have never seen Showtime Eric Young in action. But yeah, when you turned heel, like, how difficult was it? To convince the audience, hey, I'm not the comedy guy anymore. I'm a heel. I'm dangerous. I'm gonna,
Yeah, and I think, the writing staff in wrestling, there's no one does it on their own. Steve Austin didn't do it on his own.
Right.
Hulk Hogan didn't do it on his own. There's a massive staff of people, a huge group of individuals that write the shows and set you up. And when it comes time, you've got to perform. In the end, the guy that's in front of the camera, it's going to come down to you executing. But there's tons of people that were responsible for that, and I think there was a bunch of people that thought that I couldn't do it, and me and Sting are actually pretty close, and me and him had a conversation not too long ago. He was in WWE, and there's a really neat picture online of me, him, and Jeff all standing together talking.
Nice.
And it was really cool to catch up with him again. He said when they turned me heel, he didn't believe that I could do it.
Yeah.
He didn't say that to me, but he thought in his mind, like, he'd been a babyface for so long.
He probably needed to see it before he believed it could happen.
And I think a lot of people did.
Sure.
And even including me, after being a babyface for so long, being beloved, there was definitely a time.
Crowds loved you when you were a babyface.
Where, maybe Jeff Hardy was the only guy that was getting a bigger babyface reaction from me on house shows and stuff.
Right.
So it was a big deal for me. I worked hard at it. I sank my teeth into it. I take the craft of wrestling very serious. I still do. And I'm in a place now where it rewards that. Like, when I'm given an opportunity, that will come. And a lot of people are like, oh, is it weird? You're not being used, and when you are used, you're beaten and stuff. Look, everyone's going to have their time, and everyone's going to have a time where this happens. This is a massive massive billion-dollar company, and right now I fell through the cracks, and I'm in a weird spot. But they take very good care of me. It's not insulting to me. It's not. No one talks down to me. No, it's nothing like that.
Yeah.
It's just they're busy making $1 billion television show, and it's not my time. Right. And that's fine. Timing is everything. But yeah, my time in TNA was amazing, and I wouldn't change any of it. I got to see all sides of the wrestling business.
Yeah. All right, so I kind of teased it going into the break. Compare working for Dixie Carter as compared to working for Vince McMahon.
I mean, the similarities are that wrestling at all levels has all of the same problems. They're just on a different scale.
Right.
Two professionals, two very different views on business, two very different views on wrestling. Vince McMahon, if you're asking my opinion, is a genius.
Absolutely.
He invented network television, how we know it, and anyone that wants to argue that, you can call me or talk to me online. I'll argue until I'm blue in the face. He invented network television, how it exists. He was ahead of the curve on how television is going to be consumed in the next 5 years by having the WWE app for $9. You can get all that content.
Yeah.
If that existed when I was in high school, I would have dropped out and would have stayed home and watched wrestling all day.
I probably would have too.
He went from, he should be on the cover of Forbes. He went from a 750 to 790, $800 million business to a 2.9 billion. That's a B.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it doesn't even seem like a real number when you look at it. He did that in 1 year. Who grows a company like that? Nobody. And that's just for the rights to air his television shows. That's not including digital content. That's not including merchandising. That's not including, I mean, t-shirt sales alone. I don't think there's probably another media business that sells as many t-shirts as WWE.
That's wow.
Anywhere in the world.
Yeah, like you said, two different. Two people that want the same thing, but
two different people doing two different things,
two different
on two
ideals.
different levels.
Yeah,
and I would compare it to when I was in TNA. Is we were there was a point where it was a legitimate alternative. I mean, there was a place where guys could go and guys could make a very good living. If you were a fan and you were tired of this, you could go and see this, and if you didn't like this, then you could switch back over to this. There was never a point where it was a competition, and I know that we went on Monday nights and they had this illusions of grandeur, and I used to go on
they brought Hogan
shows.
In, they brought Bischoff in, they brought, we
were never competing with the WWE. We were definitely in an alternative, but there was never a competition.
Okay.
We're playing the same game. We're doing the same things. They were the Yankees, and we were the Nashville Sounds. Nashville Sounds is fun. Yeah. It's still professional baseball.
Right.
You can just
still
sit
a
closer.
Good time. Yeah.
You just have more access to the players, and some of those players are just as good as guys that are playing in the majors, but they don't have the one-way contract yet. Right. So, and that's what it was. I mean, they're like, look at the WWE roster now. I mean, 10 of the top 20 guys worked with me. AJ Styles is, you can say whatever you want, you can argue, bell to bell, he's the best wrestler in the world. He is the best.
I will not argue that with you. He is by far the best. I know people talk about Kenny Omega, and Seth Rollins is really good.
Amazing.
But there's nobody better than AJ Styles.
Bell to bell, in my opinion, right now, AJ Styles is the best in-ring performer there is.
Right.
He's been that for a long time.
Yep.
Well, he was put on the map and discovered by TNA Wrestling. And he would say that too. Like I said earlier, when it came right down to it, there's a lot of people that put him in that position, but he earned that position. And then when it was time to go, he went. He knocked it out of the park, you know. And anybody that's successful on any level, there's always a bunch of people that are responsible for getting you there. You're also part of that, positioning yourself and working hard and making the right decisions. But when it comes right down and that red light goes on, you got to deliver. No matter how much you're put into a position to succeed, you still got to do it yourself.
Sure.
And he did it.
What would you say is the best feud you're ever in, one-on-one, and who's the best opponent you ever worked in the ring?
One of my favorites is Bobby Roode. Very good friend of mine.
Fellow Canadian.
Yeah, I've spent more time in a hotel room with him than almost as much time as I've spent with my wife over the last 14 years. I've known him forever. We did Trouts for the WWE together, driving around in our car and following the company around, and just begging for a spot, begging for a shot. So a guy that to me is one of the best in-ring performers over the last 10 years. An absolute professional. And me and his, when I turned heel and he was a babyface with Beer Money, that was probably my favorite feud. But I mean, I've had a bunch. I wrestled Sting. Wrestling Sting is like it's kind of, even as I'm sitting here talking to you about it, it's like, it's hard to believe that I did it.
Right.
This is a guy I idolize.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, that, you know, Sting, for those that don't know, Sting is an absolute legend in this business. He's a Hall of Famer. He was the franchise of the old WCW days in the 90s. You know, it was him and Ric Flair, you know, and he was not even a poor man's Hulk Hogan. He was like an upper middle class man's Hulk Hogan in the WCW days. And I can imagine, like, you know, okay, you go, you know, you find out, okay, I'm working Sting. What's it like when you actually get in a ring and you look and you see Steve Borden, Sting across from you?
It's surreal. I mean, this is, like I said, and it's not a stretch. This is a guy that I idolize. I had a poster of him on my wall when I was a little kid. You know, I wasn't super exposed to WCW or NWA. Living in Canada, there wasn't a lot of coverage of it. But when I got the bug and I started trading tapes with people that I never met from South Carolina, and I would trade WWE tapes that I had for old NWA tapes, and consumed. You know, had a subscription to every wrestling magazine. And would read everything I could find about it. But Sting was one of my favorites, and you know, here I am. You know, he has been out of wrestling for 10 years, and his first match back, the very first time that wrestling fans are going to see them, it's against me, and we're both baby faces, and it was a strange match, and it wasn't a long match. I think it was 10 minutes in total time.
I think I remember seeing it. Yeah, I
was so nervous I forgot to tape my hands. But what an amazing experience! Like, wrestled Kurt Angle, beat Kurt Angle. Like, I've never in a million years would I thought that at any point in my wrestling career I was going to be in a match with him, let alone win. Choked him with a prosthetic leg. You know, me and him are very good friends. Happy birthday, Kurt. I know it was his birthday a couple days ago. So
Kurt's the best. I got to interview him years ago because obviously I used to live and work in Pittsburgh. He's from Pittsburgh, and
great guy.
He came by my old radio station. All right, we're going to take another break. When we come back, I want to get into some of the things that you're doing outside of wrestling, and I want to get your thoughts on two of the big teams here locally, the Preds and the Titans. Titans have a big game against the Texans on Sunday. I know you're a huge Preds fan. You go to a lot of the games, so I want to get your thoughts on that. We're going to talk with Showtime Eric Young about his life beyond wrestling when we come back here on Sportsline. Stay with us.